Hi everyone, I'm Mark Lello, and this presentation is on the iOS haptic feedback e-learning lesson. So what is it? It's an introduction to Apple's new Haptic engine they implemented on the iPhone, and it is specifically supposed to be helpful to onboard new users and potentially even current users who are just unfamiliar with haptic feedback in general and also how it is implemented on Apple iOS. The learners I'm going after are new and current iPhone users, and specifically those users with little to no knowledge of haptic feedback. And the motivation for them to take this lesson is so they can answer the questions of what is haptic feedback and why is it beneficial to me as a smartphone and specifically an iPhone user. So the learning objectives that I made for this lesson are first, to understand what haptic feedback is. So they basically need to be able to define haptic feedback and summarize it definitively. And then learning objective 2 is to understand the purpose of it. So basically, why is it beneficial to them as an iPhone user? Why would it help them? And objective number 3 is to know how to identify haptic feedback interactions. So once they understand what haptic feedback is, the purpose of it, then they need to be able to identify haptic feedback interactions. And this also kind of helps them answer the questions of why it's beneficial. And then the fourth and final learning objective is to know the difference between the types of 3D touch on iOS. So 3D touch is one of the feature sets of haptic feedback on iOS that they released with the latest iPhone. My implementation approach. So I started with the concept, and that started with basically researching if there are similar apps or e-learning tutorials on this topic, and I didn't find anything, which was surprising. So I went with this, and next I went into my learning objectives, which we just discussed. And then I went into my design phase 1, which was essentially wireframing. I began with sketches, then turned them in, and then converted them into wires. And then moved on to design phase 2, which was essentially a very lo-fi prototype. And I did some quick, just mock user tests where I got some initial feedback before I truly implemented it into my mobile system. So moving on into the mobile implementation, I created that, and after I validated the design with my lo-fi prototype. And I made the implementation iOS friendly on a mobile app, which you will see later in a quick demo. And then finally, I had my system evaluation where I conducted 12 user tests, which we will also go into more detail in later. All right, so for the demo, I will show you the app. For timing purposes, we're not going to go into the amount of detail I would like, but you will be able to get, I think, a large enough flavor to understand what's going on with it. Okay, so, all right, as you can see, here I'm mirroring my iPhone, and I put it into just an app here, and here we are. So we'll go ahead and sign in, and as you can see, this is they're prompted right away to do the pretest, and it is identical to the post-test. We won't go into too much detail with it, but each of these questions does answer the learning objectives of what haptic feedback is, why is it beneficial to smartphone users, or essentially also answers, what is the purpose of it? And then the last 4 questions on here are basically answer the third and fourth objectives of knowing how to identify interactions that involve haptic feedback, and then also knowing the difference between the different types of those interactions. We're going to just continue past this. So as you can see, we have just the definitive what haptic feedback is here being defined, and then the purpose of it, And here I just inform the users and learners of just how to some more in-depth not learner knowledge here of just understanding where they can configure haptic feedback and touch on their iPhones. Now we go into the objectives of understanding the types of interactions and how they work. So as you can see here, they get feedback right away on how to do a quick action with 3D touch. And on the top there you can see it's telling them to press firmly on the camera icon. And I'm pressing try again to refresh each time while we're going through this. And I'll go next now after they got the green check mark telling them they did okay. The next button shows up once they successfully complete this exercise. And then they go into the next type of interaction that they can learn here, where it defines it. And then it gives them the instructions here at the top to press on the Nintendo for the peek and pop. And now they see the peek. And then if they swipe up, they'll pop into the different quick actions for the email. And you saw the green check mark, and now the next button shows up too, so they can proceed. And that's the lesson. It's just a quick tutorial. And here they begin the self-eval, which is the post-test. Additionally, this is identical to the pre-test you already saw too. Additionally, they also can use this nav menu. This nav menu also gives them the user freedom to go back to any subsection of the lesson they want, so they can also do it at their own pace. There's no time here, so that was one of the principles that I really wanted to implement that I specifically like. Okay, so now that we're finished with that, we'll talk about the evaluation real quick. So I evaluated 12 participants, and from that data gathered, I was able to basically use all of their test scores from the pre and post test. And for the statistical significance, I had the hypothesis that the post test scores would be higher than the pre-test scores, and I made a significance level of 0.05, and using a two-tailed t-test, I got a t-value of 4.41 with a p-value of 0.001. So the result is significant since it's less than 0.05. And so therefore I was able to reject the null hypothesis, which was good. And then this also helped support that the e-learning lesson did likely make the post-test scores higher than the pre-test scores. And then also my effect size, that was 1.654. So this is anything greater basically than 0.06 is considered a large difference. So the fact that this one is 1.6 it's very, very large. So this helped also validate that the lesson helped the learners learn the material better, improving their scores on average over a standard deviation of 1, which is huge. So that was good. And then future research and development for this, so from my evaluations, I got user feedback here that you can see. One of the items was to give immediate feedback to the users during the post-test. In the post-test you saw when I was doing the demo of the app, I currently do not have immediate feedback of right and wrong answers. They get an email, and I get an email also telling me their answers, but they want immediate feedback while they're in the mobile app that I was demoing. So I think that would be great. I didn't put that in my first phase here. It just wasn't in scope. So I would definitely do that for the next phase if it were to continue. And then the next feedback item was explore collaboration. A lot of people like collaboration, and I didn't have feedback on how people thought it could be implemented with my app, but it's definitely worth at least researching options for the next iteration. And then finally, my last thing I would like to do, if I were to continue, would be evaluate a larger sample set of participants, basically to give further validity to my statistics I had from the evaluation, just because a number of 12 participants could be considered a small sample set in terms of research to many people. So I would definitely like to keep evaluating. And that's all I have. So thank you for watching, everyone.